Uh, I would say that, like all really interesting ideas, I had no idea what I was doing. Uh, Somehow it just seemed like a smart thing to do to um, create this um, conversation. The is that we were in the midst of the bombing of Baghdad, shock and awe bombing. And as I was sitting there watching the B-52s dropping bombs over the city of Baghdad and feeling really horrible for the people who were down below and imagining, as mediators do, experiencing empathy with the people who are in those difficult situations. Um, just kind of without my even thinking about it, I had a little fantasy, which was that out of the B-52 bombers would parachute mediators by the tens of thousands, each of us with our little clipboards, preparing to go door to door. And it made me laugh. And somehow it made the event feel a little less horrible. But then I asked myself, well, what would you actually do when you hit the ground? And that actually became the basis for a paper that I wrote, which at that time was called Mediators Without Borders. And I sent it to a couple of friends, and one of them, Erica Ariel Fox, who was at Harvard, showed it to Bob Creo. And Bob Creo, who's a mediator and arbitrator, said, let's do this. Let's make it happen. And if he hadn't said that, I probably would not have done it. But I was hoisted by my own petard and sort of trapped because there's no way I could say I'd written the article. And so we kind of began not really knowing what we were doing. And we began to kind of imagine what this thing might be. And within a very short period of time, we made a presentation and a number of people joined us at an ACR meeting. And then what happened is I got an email from a young man who was in a refugee camp. He was a former child soldier in a refugee camp in Budaduram in Ghana, saying, help us. He'd heard about us from somewhere. And I said, well, we're just getting organized. I have no idea sort of how to help you at this point. We don't even really know exactly what we're doing, but here's a training manual that I wrote to do mediation trainings. And if it's helpful to you, I'm just going to email it to you, and perhaps there's something that you can do with it. And he wrote back and said, thank you very much. I appreciate your training manual. We can't afford the paper to print it on. So this gives you a little bit of an idea of, where the rubber hits the road, how real this is. And so it so happened that one of the people who was interested in the organization was going to Africa. And I said, would you go to the Budaduram refugee camp in Ghana and meet this man and conduct a training in conflict resolution for child soldiers? And she said, yes. And that began the first set of trainings. And then we continued to have this project in Ghana and then later in Liberia, which is where many of the soldiers were from. And these kids who were 8, 9, 10, when they were recruited into the military, grew up with murder and rape and devastation, knew nothing else. And all of a sudden, as a result of learning this set of skills, in the first place, stopped fighting with each other in the refugee camp and killing each other. And in the second, began to think about how they might actually go home to the communities that they had ravaged and what they would do when they got there. And so we began working with them, and Bob Creo went over, Jenny Morrison, a number of people went in that very first project. And we also began working with Somali refugees in Pittsburgh, which was where we were located, and began trying to assist those refugees in becoming a part of that community. Hi, Barbara. So then what happened is we began expanding. I went to Zimbabwe and we began doing a little bit of work there. Hurricane Katrina happened and we thought, well, you know, if this is really mediators at that point without borders or mediators beyond borders, that means the US too. And so when Katrina happened, we said, okay, we've got to do something in Katrina because this is just devastating. People are fighting with each other. They don't know how to get their needs met. There's conflict taking place within these communities that have been destroyed. What do we do? And so we created the Katrina Project. And out of that, we've had meetings with people in the lower Ninth Ward in New Orleans that were very powerful and dramatic and helped them get some of the things that they needed. And the man who was the head of this group said a very incredible thing to me. He said, you know, there have been lots of people who have wanted to do things to us and other people who've wanted to do things for us, but you're the first group that has wanted to do something with us. And that just expressed to me what this whole project was about, to actually be in there with people struggling on a day-by-day basis. And the idea of Mediators Beyond Borders at that point was, we are not here to do the mediations. We are here to teach you, to support you, to build your skills and capacities as a community in resolving your own conflicts. That was the idea and the goal. In order to be able to do that, of course, the first thing we had to do was come to a kind of critique of how aid and support is given by groups from the United States to groups in other parts of the world. And we had to develop a methodology, which we called an elicitive methodology, derived from John Paul Lederach, who's a mediator with the Mennonite Conciliation Service. And the basic idea is, instead of coming in and saying, well, here's how we do it in the US to copy us, we would instead say, what are the various words that you use to describe conflict within your culture? And what do you do when one of those types of conflict occurs, and what works, what's successful? What do you want to keep on doing? And where does it stop? Where do you get stuck? And would you like to learn what other people do when they get stuck in that place? People from other cultures. And now we have a way of being in collaborative relationships with people, in developing kind of multicultural approaches to impasse, to intractable conflict. So that was kind of the basic idea of it. And then I think the next major event that occurred was that I was contacted by a woman who was a mediator and a friend from Copenhagen, who said, you know, we've got the United Nations coming here for this climate change conference, and no mediators are coming to this. And do you think maybe we ought to do something? So we created the Climate Change Project. And I noticed before that Greg is somewhere on this call. He was, I think he's gone off to another page now. Greg is on the climate change team and was there at this set of meetings. And we began to appear on the stage. And it was pretty audacious to think that we could be doing something like this. And yet there were no other mediators present in Copenhagen. And so what happened was that we began to have a little bit of an outsized impact, but one that we weren't entirely ready for. We drafted a treaty provision. Who knows how to draft a treaty provision? I had no idea what we were doing, but it felt like that was the right thing to do. We needed to have a treaty provision that called for mediation, because under the Kyoto Agreement, there was just conciliation, which would have taken tens of years and was only advisory. And we knew that as soon as there was an agreement, people would get into arguments over it, and that would stall the whole process. So here's where I kind of began to realize what the stakes were. That is, what we are talking about is the fact that conflict resolution now, in this historical moment and over the development of the last several decades, is actually one of the key skills that is needed in order to be able to address and solve global problems. The problems that we face, like the pandemic, cannot be solved by a single country. Can't be done. Can't be solved by military force. Can't be solved by litigation. And so what's left? And unfortunately, here's what the answer is. We are what's left. And now we have to take that seriously. And we have to say, okay, something significant is shifting here. And what is shifting is the need for what I call the collaborative arts and sciences. The need for not just conflict resolution in all of its manifestations, but for dialogue, for creative problem solving, for collaborative negotiation, for restorative justice, victim offender mediation, conflict coaching in all of its various forms. All of these end up being essentially ways for people to get together and talk about their differences and reach agreements over problems that affect everyone. That's really what we're talking about here. It's really very simple. And what's also simple is the realization that if we don't do this, people will die. People are dying at this moment around the world for the lack of these skills. So when I took the kind of leap, there were two questions that I asked myself. There was the first one, who the hell are you to think that you could know enough to have, sort of the right idea about what needs to be done? What gives you the idea that somehow you know what the answer is? And the second question was, who the hell are you not to, if you have any idea at all about what might conceivably make things better? Who are you to keep your mouth shut and say nothing, to pull back and do nothing when something needs to be? So it was that second voice that I listened to. And this kind of gave me an idea about what it is that we're really trying to do here. What actually is more audacious than somebody who thinks that they have an answer to your problems and is going to come in and help you solve them? That is pretty audacious, and it's pretty outrageous and arrogant and God-like and all of those sorts of things that you're pretending to. And yet, if you are able to do that with a real sense of humility, with a real orientation to working together, to jointly defining and creating not just the outcomes, but the language that is needed in order to be able to even talk about those problems and those outcomes. That's, I think, what our project is. So now if we take a look at, and I'm sorry, I'm going on a little bit here, Milton.
Oh, please do.
So if we take a look, for example, at the issue of bias, stereotyping, prejudice, and discrimination against Jews, against Blacks, against women, against Latinos, against Asians, against Muslims, against Christians, Catholics, you name it. We've got a form of bias or prejudice that operates in some places around the world. And if we take a look at the conversations that we are having about these various forms of prejudice, we would say that most of them are complete failures. They just don't work at all. What happens instead, as I think everybody on this call recognizes, is that we get into shouting matches. that are completely pointless and never change anybody's mind. We don't know how to talk about these issues. So this is kind of what I'm working on at the moment. How do we do this? How do we have these conversations? If we just look at what is happening right now, in the war that just ended in Israel and the Palestinian territories, how do we talk about this? And the answer is virtually all of those conversations are failures. Once again, there is accusation of anti-Semitism, accusation of Islamophobia. There is accusations on all sides. And we know that these accusations have been going on for a long time. And we also know that they get us exactly nowhere. And we also know that children are dying because we don't know how to have these conversations. People are dying, innocent people, even people who you would think of as maybe guilty people, doesn't matter. People are dying as a result of this. So here's where I think we have our project cut out for us. The world is getting closer and closer to uncontrolled conflict responses, if I can put it that way. The clock, the nuclear clock, is set close to midnight now, and we keep getting more and more powerful in terms of our weaponry and means of destruction, and less skillful in being able to talk our way out of those highly polarized, incredibly difficult situations. Yesterday, the Senate of the United States voted not to investigate the incidents that happened in Washington, D.C. on January 6th. Why? Because of this polarization, where it isn't even possible to think that you're talking about the same problem. So what we now have to do, we have to figure out how to draw people into conversation with one another. And the truth is, every one of us knows how to do this because we've been trained as conflict resolvers, because every mediation that we do begins with two people who don't want to talk to each other, with two people who don't share the same language. And now, what do? Through the dialogue that takes place, we discover how to talk to one another. You can't come to it and predefine that. On the call is Jeffrey Corey, who did incredible work in helping to create the conditions for dialogue between, in Northern Ireland, between Catholic and Protestant groups, and in the Republic of Ireland. And this was a process that lasted for years. Jeffrey and I had conversations about this going back over years. And this is what it takes. This is the long haul that we are in. And while we describe it this way, there is some real urgency to what we are actually doing. Is not disappearing. Is that, that's okay. So here's where I think we, this is kind of the last point that I'll make, and then I'll just like to respond to comments or questions or whatever. On the one hand, we have the experience of mediation. Every one of us has a little piece of that experience. But on the other hand, we don't yet know how to scale this up to large group, multi-stakeholder, consensus building and problem solving processes. There are a few groups of people who have experience with this. Barbara Phillips, who's on the call, has had some experience, I know, in previous years with this. And there are others of us, I think, as well, who have. There are groups like Chris Moore, ACR in Boulder, Colorado, there's the Consensus Building Institute, CBI at MIT. There's the program on negotiation at Harvard. There are a few individuals scattered around who've done some work in this, but here's what we do know. We do know that it is possible for people who hate each other to come into conversations with one another and to work out what's going to happen without shooting each other. We know that that is possible. And now the question becomes, how do we make that happen? I can just tell you very briefly what I think the answer is. Top down, bottom up, and sideways. In other words, every which way. Without saying there is one preferred way or one way that's going to work and every other way isn't. The way that MBBI has chosen to make it happen is through skill building, capacity building, working with people in local communities around the world to try to improve their ability to work with each other. Victoria Gray, who's on the call, is on MBBI's board of directors and is a very skilled mediator, working with the National Mediation Board. Thanks to Steve Goldsmith, who is on the call, we have now contacts with Rotary and are working closely with people. In fact, there are several people from Rotary. Richard Denton is here on the call, and I saw some other people earlier, but I think they're on the next page. We've got 4 pages now. So I'm not sure who all here is here from Rotary. Carl Schneider is here, who has also had experience in this area, etc. That's not true? Not true. Oh, okay. Oh, okay. I take it back. Okay, so here's what I will say. It's going to take all of us to do this. So instead of thinking of being about me or about anyone, no single individual person is going to be able to do this. We have to do it together. It's way, way too big. Here's what I think that it is going to take. There's a kind of wonderful little phrase from Ray Bradbury that I have taped to my desk over here. It says, go to the edge of the cliff, jump off, build your wings on the way down. And I think that's what we have to do. To imagine that we have the answer, I think that is actually losing it. Instead, we have to begin knowing that we have no answer at all, and that the answer will emerge out of the work we do, out of the conversation. This is what we do in mediations. We have no idea before we begin where it's going to end up. It is always surprising to us. So that's what I see MBBI is about, why I hope you will join and help make that happen, why it's important for there to be thousands of projects like Katrina and Copenhagen and Somalia and the Buddha Durham refugee camp, literally thousands of them. And still that would not be enough. So,
thank you, Ken. Thank you for continuously inspiring us and making your vision happen and starting MBBI. To celebrate your birthday, we are over 80 people for your 80th birthday. I hope that we can celebrate many more years, but we have a small surprise for you. So Veronica, it's all yours.
Yeah, speaking of surprises, Ken, and I will preface this, everyone, by saying that Ken very explicitly asked that we did not make this a celebration about him and for him, and we have respectfully disregarded that request. And we put together, actually, there was so many people involved in pulling this information and putting this little tribute together, but I think it's also just so inspiring because he planted a seed, and in his gentleness and humbleness, he's always, it's not about a single person, it's about what, you know, the ripple effects in the community that it creates. So without further ado, I will be sharing screens, and everyone keep their fingers crossed, but there's some technical difficulties. And here we go. And I want to say a special thank you to Susie Norbeck, who was instrumental in pulling all of these nuggets together. And if we can, I saw her in the crowd, but she has the theme of today, a butterfly. There you go. Hold on. I'm going to spotlight you, Susie. There we go. So in honor of the butterfly effect, we have Susie and the butterfly.
Yes,
Thank you so much.
Well, now I invite everyone to unmute yourselves and let's sing happy birthday song to Ken all together.
Happy birthday to you. Happy birthday to you. Happy birthday, dear Ken. Happy birthday to you. And many more.
How old are you?
And speaking of more surprises, our very own Scott Martin.
Yeah. So this is from all of us at MBBI. So you have 2 scarves because of course we're going to give away one of them. You have a passport from the Niska Nation. Wine, plants, of course, everything suited for Ken Cloke and from the MBBI family. So everybody on there, Thank you, everyone.
Wow.
Get back
Well,
Yeah.
how about a toast? Let's have a toast.
Yeah, that's a good
For all
idea.
of you. Let's have a toast for Kim. You're awesome, Kim. Thank you.
Definitely.
Happy birthday.
Yeah, happy birthday, Ken.
Yep,
Happy
happy
Love
birthday.
you.
Ken.
Happy birthday.
Happy.
Happy birthday.
Happy birthday, Ken.
Birthday.
Yeah. Kim.
Surprise.
Awesome surprise.
Well, now I can invite everyone, whoever would like to wish to share their special moments with Ken, or if they have a special question for Ken, this will be the perfect time to share those moments. So just put your hands up in your, if you can, because I cannot show every 3 pages. So we can give you a chance to wish him personal wishes or questions. I see hands coming up.
Could you put in the chat room where we could make a donation to MBB or to any of Ken's favorite charities? You put that link in the chat room?
Perfect. I see Isabel. Would you like to start? Unmute yourself.
Sure. Hi, Ken. Happy birthday. I have lots of memories of Ken, although my most recent one was him actually coming to my community here in Los Angeles, in Ladera Heights, as we started to prepare conversations around gentrification and how our community was going to hang together. You do that all the time, Ken. I mean, it's like you will go anywhere with anybody to help them talk. We love you. Happy birthday. You got to hang around for another 80, brother, because we need you. Love you.
I see Shop Elavar.
Well, Kim, I've heard you so many times, and you always speak from the heart. You're so passionate about what you do, and you are an asset to all of us and to humanity. And this is for you. You are people of action. You are a peace builder. So thank you again for all you do. And we wish you another 80 years, hopefully, who knows? But your legacy will stay behind you a lot longer than what you live. So thank you. And you are a peace builder. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. Beautiful.
Gabor.
Gabor.
Yes, hi, Ken here from Europe. I was, when I watch your screen, I'm always impressed by all these books you're surrounded by. And I was wondering if you could share with us one book of fiction and one book of nonfiction that are particularly close to your heart.
Very nice question. Been narrowing it down to one. There are so many. This is going to sound a little strange, but it may be because I just read a recent translation, a new translation, which is several plays that I've read many years ago, starting when I was in high school, was the first time I came across this. These are 3 plays by Aeschylus, written over 2,000 years ago, that are called the Oresteia trilogy. The first one is about the murder of Agamemnon by Clytemnestra. The second one is about the murder of Clytemnestra by her son Orestes and his sister Electra. And the third is about the revenge of the Furies against Orestes for killing his mother. But it's about the problem of revenge. There are so many absolutely gorgeous pieces of fiction. I just finished reading just a magnificent book by Elena Ferranti, Days of Abandonment. I'm now reading Elsa Moranti's book, History, which is about World War II. So every night, every single evening, I read in several works of fiction. And for nonfiction, well, it just so happens that I was picking up this book just earlier. This is actually The Genealogy of Morals by Nietzsche. But that isn't the one that I really want to mention. I would say that probably one of the greatest influences in terms of nonfiction thinking is actually Albert Einstein. Especially some of the books that he wrote on his general theory of relativity and the special theory of relativity. But also just a book of essays called Out of My Later Years, which are social essays about issues that people are facing across the world. And for all of his incredible brilliance, Einstein was someone who was very connected to the suffering of the world, understood it very deeply, and was very closely connected to it. Another one is Anthills of the Savannah by Chinua Achebe in the category of fiction. I think it's a totally brilliant piece of work. There is, I would say that I'm a little bit fickle when it comes to books. So the ones that impress me the most are the ones that I'm kind of reading right at the moment. The latest nonfiction book is one called The Janus Point, which is about the nature of time by Julian Barber. And another one actually by Daniel Kahneman called Noise, which is very recent now. So these are what I'm involved in right now.
You can see Ken's into comedy, a lot of romantic.
I missed that.
Ken's into romantic comedies, you can see.
Yeah. That too, actually. Okay. Thank you for that question, Gabor.
Natalia?
Thank you so much.
Happy birthday, Ken. Thank you so much for creating this wonderful community of people that are working in this way to make the world a much more peaceable place. I first heard you speak last year, peak pandemic. It was a really difficult time. And since I've been able to move leaps and bounds forward as a budding mediator, and I'm just so grateful for you for planting so many thousands of seeds of potential and so many people to do that, to do just that. So I'd like to know, if there was, similar to the previous question, but if there was one book that you'd want everyone to read, or one quote, or one idea that you'd like to see spread, what would that be?
Well, I'm going to cheat. I would say the one book would be the collected works of Shakespeare, if I had to pick a book. But there's another book that I would pick. It would be actually one that I put together a couple of years ago. It's called Words of Wisdom, and it's a collection of hundreds of quotations, kind of very nice quotations from various people. Someone, I can't remember who, so I'm missing the quote right now. Someone said, you can't really tell what the impact of any educational experience has been, any training, any course, any class has been for about 20 years. Because after about 20 years, people begin to live the things that they've learned. And you then begin to see what mattered and what really didn't. And here's the one that kind of the quote that sticks with me. It's not actually a quote, it's an idea. If someone said it, I don't know who it was, but here's the idea. You can count the number of seeds in an orange, but you can't count the number of oranges in a seed. And everything that we do is a little seed that we're planting, and sometimes it'll take 20 years before it comes to fruition. And then you discover how many oranges are in a seed in the first generation, and the next, and the next. that's, I think, what we need to do. We need to be out planting those seeds.
Thank you. It was beautiful.
And that was so inspiring and so beautiful. Thank you. Thank you for sharing that. I think Wangari is next.
Wangari. Hello.
Hi, Ken from Nairobi. How are you?
Very good. Thank you. How are you?
I'm well, and yeah, happy birthday to you. And as we'd be saying, Mzee to our elder, happy birthday to you. I just wanted to share with you, I preserved some white chocolate cake, donuts, and some hot chocolate. So I'm sharing this with you on your birthday. So, and happy birthday. As I share this with you, it's really just to also acknowledge you sticking on to your calling, because you sticking on to the calling is what has brought some of us into this work. You just sticking on. And I think it really just opens up an even bigger challenge now for the rest of us, because even as you're speaking, I could hear a lot of boldness in your journey. And in that boldness, I think us having the opportunity to share this birthday today just gives us also the boldness to just keep on. Because yes, it's like we are in some work that is very elusive, but it's needed. It's needed, just as you said it. So I acknowledge you, and yes, so I share with you your birthday. So happy birthday to you. And yes, as I take a bite, happy birthday, Mzee Ken. Asante sana. God bless.
Enjoy.
I am.
Thank you for joining us. Fiona?
Hi, Fiona.
Hey, Ken, happy birthday.
Thank you.
I was remembering and wishing I had a story to share about you, because we had spent time in Estes Park together when we were first creating MBB, and had sat down and kind of started thinking about, what does this thing look like? And what is the structure? And what is the mission and the vision and the whole thing? We had this amazing, I think it was a weekend, with you and Bob Creo and a bunch of other people, and sat down and kind of figured it out. And then I was remembering how we were in Copenhagen, and again, kind of flying by the seat of our pants.
Yeah.
Figuring it out as we went along. Every hour, every day of the 14 days that we spent in Copenhagen was a new adventure. And we're just here, we show up, and however we can make an impact, that's what we're gonna do. And I think it's very typical you. And I had a question for you too. I was thinking that, you know, so often there's a defining moment when we are very young, children or young adults, that really sets us on our path, wherever that ends up taking us. And I was so curious as to what was your defining youngster moment?
I would say that the defining moment, there were really, you know, and you'd have to find a number of them, but I would say that the most important one probably was in the early 1960s, when I became a part of the civil rights movement that worked in the South, trying to end segregation in Alabama and South Georgia, and meeting and working with illiterate sharecroppers who knew more about the way the world worked than my professors at Berkeley, who had a bigger heart. And there was a kind of moment when something happened to me. It actually happened several times, but here was the first one that happened. When I came into the South as a civil rights worker, I came as a white Northern student. And within a matter of days, it became quite clear to me, just because of the fact that if I saw someone who was white, I knew that I was in danger. And if I saw someone who was Black, I knew I was safe. And that experience of that cultural shift has really stayed with me. And to be able to have had the gift of seeing people step up to a challenge that really was life-threatening, to face the kind of everyday terrorism, and I mean terrorism, that was unleashed on people in those communities, and to have had the courage to stand up for what was right. That was incredibly impressive to me. And it made me decide I have to stand with them. And that was a big shift for me. A second moment, I would say, came when, in the same experience, this one happened in Southern Alabama when I was outside of a church that was under attack by Klan's people. We were tear gassed, being pursued by dogs, and people being arrested. And there was a moment where there was a confrontation on the street, and I had, of course, been trained in nonviolence. I was even a trainer in nonviolent techniques. And when this happened, and I was moved out in order to get some children and move them back into safety into the church, and there was a confrontation with a white Klansman on the street, just across the street, who was yelling these obscenities at these little kids. And I turned to him and I started to respond. And I was really angry. And as soon as I opened my mouth and started to respond, he smiled, because he knew he got me. And I knew he got me. And so I had to stop and think to myself, what is this really about? What are the, what happened here? And I thought about that for a long period of time. There were other incidents like that, deeply humiliating experiences for the people who, disempowering experiences. And yet, they showed up every single day, every single mass meeting that we held. People came, children, women, people, elderly people, people who could easily lose their lives. And that had a big impact on me. Hope that helps.
Thank you so much, Ken. I am even more in awe.
Ken, I would like to ask, ask a little question. Of course, I am a member of MBBI, but lately we have seen there is an opportunity for public diplomacy. Rotary Action Group for Public Diplomacy opportunity, and we put an application for that, and hopefully it will be approved on the 9th of next month. Where do you see both groups working together, MBBI and public diplomacy? And we thought about, how can we create a community of opportunities for all through a positive dialogue? So where do you think you see us working, even although we are probably the same person, how we can work together?
Very nice question. And what I'd like to do is to broaden it, expand it, and think just a little bit together about how we, in the first place, develop our skills in dialogue. In the second place, how we apply those skills to extremely difficult political conflicts that are the ones that diplomacy tries to tackle. So the difficulty is that unless we have an idea about what politics is that allows us to create a different language and a different process and a different set of relationships, we will slip into the existing ones. And that will be sort of it will turn our dialogues in the wrong direction. So here's what it seems to me that we have to fundamentally do. We have to get a handle on how to advocate in ways that don't deny the ability of others to advocate for what they believe in. If I can put it in this way, what is an interest-based form of politics? And I think that there are 4 answers to this. I'll just give you a couple of them. One, politics is a social problem-solving process. And if that's what it is, then we can define what that social problem-solving process would look like as mediators. We can say, well, here's how we would undertake to solve a set of social problems without slipping into the kind of hidden, what I think of as the operating system, the algorithm, the code. And if we think about this for a moment, we can see that it fundamentally consists of this. If we take, for example, political issues of race and gender and class and religion and all of these issues in which we have so much bias and prejudice and discrimination. How do we tackle those issues? And I think in the first place, what we have to see is that those present themselves on 3 fundamental levels. First, there are communications and behaviors that people engage in interpersonally with one another. Beneath that, more deeply than that, are systems and structures that institutionalize and regularly recreate those behaviors. And deeper than those systems and structures is, to put it just very, very simply and a little bit crudely, the zero-sum game. The assumption that a hierarchy has to be created because there isn't enough to go around. So here's my favorite way of addressing this. There are 3 categories of question that I can ask this group of people. Category 1, who is the oldest person on this call? Maybe that's me. Who's the youngest? Who's the tallest? Who's the shortest? Who lives the closest to downtown Chicago? Who lives the furthest away? And notice there's a single correct answer to that question, to any of those questions. Category of question number 2, how old are you? How tall are you? Where do you live? And now notice there's a single correct answer for each person. Category of question number 3, what issues are you facing at whatever age you are at? What does your height mean to you? What did it mean to you when you were 10 or 11 or 12? What do you love about where you live? What do you not love? And notice now there are multiple correct answers for everybody, for each person. And that's what an interest-based approach to diplomacy, I think, has to begin with. The idea of asking questions for which there are multiple correct answers. And this, of course, informs our dialogue. If we have a dialogue, for example, I worked with a group through Mediators Beyond Borders in a project that we have called DPACE, Democracy, Politics, and Conflict Engagement, which Jarling has been a part of. And we've been working with various groups of people, especially starting in the last election with progressive social justice organizations, social change organizations. And in the course of that, we worked with a group called Indivisible, which at its height had about 6,000 chapters across the country. And they were very active in the Democratic primaries. And here's what happened. There were supporters of Bernie and supporters of Elizabeth and supporters of Pete and supporters of Joe, and none of them could talk to one another. And as soon as you said the word Bernie or Pete or Joe or Elizabeth, all conversation stopped because everybody knew exactly what everyone thought. No diplomacy, no negotiation, no conversation, no learning. And so what we did was we came up with a set of questions that were designed to help people enter that dialogue without stopping it before it even begins. Here are the first two questions. Number one, without mentioning the name of the candidate that you support, what values, what principles do you believe your candidate stands for? And then why do you think those are important? Question two, how could we use those principles, those values, to improve this conversation that we're having right now? So you can imagine now how that dialogue is going to shift as a result of those two questions. Diplomacy has always been a kind of rights-based process that has been overwhelmed by power when it couldn't produce results. But if we think about what is an interest-based form of diplomacy, what would that look like? Then what we have to have is not weaponry and lawyers. What we have to have is facilitators and mediators, people who can ask questions. And of course, we know those of us who are lawyers, we're taught never ask a question that you don't already know the answer to. And of course, those are exactly the questions that we want to avoid asking. What's the point in asking a question you already know the answer to? So what we want to do is ask a question that even the person who is being asked doesn't know the answer to. And even after they've answered it, they still don't know what the answer is. And in that moment between question and answer, where the question has actually been allowed to deepen before the answer has taken its place, in that moment, real conversation arises. In that space between question and answer. And here's what Elie Wiesel says: you are my question, and I am yours. Now let's talk. Okay, so I think that approach, that idea, actually trying to find out who the other is, even when they don't know themselves. I think that's the beauty of this work. It's what makes it so absolutely gorgeous. It's what creates the magic. That was a long answer to your question, Chubb.
Ken, you are awesome.
Thank
And
you.
I want to give you this what says service with passion.
Beautiful.
You are so passionate, and I love the way you put it together. I don't think any of us probably in the new organization, public diplomacy, will answer those questions better than you have answered. And we appreciate you, and we appreciate your passion for peace and peace talks. Thank you. You're awesome.
Yeah, one thing I want to make sure that I say in response, which is this comes actually from Krishnamurti, who says that the last duty of the teacher is to free the student from the teacher. And the way you do that is by saying, no, it's not me. You have the ability to do this. What's required really is to try to imagine what the tone needs to be, and then feel your way into that tone.
Well,
Right?
Ken, thank you so much. And everyone, thank you so much for joining us today to celebrate Ken and his vision and MBBI. Normally, we have this event once a month, the last Friday of the month. This is all about celebrating each other, getting to know each other, and building relationships. because we do believe that peace starts by true building relationships, as Ken has been teaching us so gracefully. I know that we have more questions. I think this conversation can go through tonight a little bit longer. If anyone wants to stay longer and if Ken has time, perhaps we can carry it a little bit longer, maybe until 9:15. But I hope to see you again. I'm just putting a note here. We have it every month, and come join us. These are the best way of building relationships. But Jarling, I think you have your hand is up, so please go ahead.
Thank you, Meltem. I feel like I just attended a master class. So thank you so much, Ken. Every time like I hear you say anything, I feel like I'm learning so much. So happy birthday from Boston. I miss being out in SoCal where you and Joan are. And I would love to see both of you in person post-pandemic one of these days. So
with your baby.
With the baby, yes, yes. With the new 5-month-old, sorry, I can't even keep track of that, 5-month-old peacemaker in the making. So I love your humility. I think that's one of the things that I love about mediation as well, is that it's about the folks in front of us and it's not about us. And you inspire me. And I think, you know, your library of books, it shows in how you think and your vision, you know, the creative ways you think about how we can make this world better. And I hope I can be like you.
Oh, thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. That's very sweet. Thank you, Charlene.
Mariko, I know your hand is up for some time, and I apologize for not pointing it out earlier, but please go ahead.
Oh, thank you very much. I just quickly wanted to really send all our love from Japan. And it's been a wonderful journey for me to had the lectures in Japan with Ken and John. It's been amazing experiences at the Tokyo University and elsewhere that we have really benefited from your wisdom. You know, coming from Japan, where we have the highest longevity of life, and our elderly say that when you are at the 70, you just started to learn about the life. And when you are 80, yes, you are fully achieved to be a master of life to teach. So I really wanted to echo that, yes, you know, this is a masterclass, you know, seminar. We have so much to learn, but I think, you know, it's such an incredible time that we are together as an educator at the university, that I'm always thinking, how can we develop the classroom or the program or institution that we can produce somebody like Ken? You have talked about, yes, there is an intellectual side, but having AI, digital transformation, it is getting to every single aspect of life. But as a human, there are a space that robot cannot replace. We have emotion. You talked about the genealogy of morals that, you know, AI and other technologies now try to catch up. But the role of mediators, if you have just one single aspect, if you wanted to share with us that we shall perhaps include into some teaching or some capacity building for the future, because digital technology is everywhere. Its whole teaching of online to, you know, different format has completely changed the scope and, you know, the strategy that we, you know, accommodate. So if you have some ideas in relation to our moral development as part of the human development, and to make sure that the you know, humanistic side of mediation to the leadership, that is to really create our peaceful and then also sustainable world that we want to see. So that's just a, you know, small token of really showing you have really exhibited incredible power of mind to all of us. And I wanted to really thank you, Ken, and hope we will continue to work together and building the East and in the West, and then to have a different landscape for the future of vision. Thank you, Ken and John.
Thank
and
you,
everyone.
Thank you, Mariko. Beautifully said. Just very quickly to respond to your point about morals, I would say two things. First, it's important to distinguish between ethics, values, ethics, and morality, to see that those are three somewhat different approaches to fundamentally the same problem. But here's where I think there's something that might be helpful to you. I think that there are three orders of ethics, values, and morality. First is the specific value, the specific ethic, the specific moral that you want to call attention to. The second order is the value of having values, the ethic of having ethics, the morality of having morals. That is, to look at it from a larger perspective. But the third level is the point where your values disappear because you become the thing that you value. You become the ethic. The morality merges with who you are, so that it isn't a question any longer of being moral. It's just a question of being. And so a part of what we want to do in connection with conflict resolution, that's a kind of value that we may have, but we need to respect the values of people who have other values. And that also is a part of conflict resolution. And then finally, what we want to do is to ourselves become the things that we value. Let's see, we've got some light here coming in, disturbing everyone. Okay, I hope that helps, Mariko.
Yes, thank you so much, Ken. It's incredible.
You're muted, Meltem.
I know, I keep doing that. I think Dorit has one more comment to make, but with again, thanking you all, and Ken, thank you so much for making this event so wonderful for us, making it again, sharing your wisdom with us. I wish you again many, many healthy and happy years. And thanks everyone again. After Dorit, I think I will close this session, but I hope to see you guys our next happy hour conversations. So the floor is yours, Dorit.
Thank you. Thank you. Mr. Ken Cloke. Hi, sweetie.
Hi, Dorit.
Hi. You're a dear friend, a dear mentor over 20 years. That's how we first became acquainted. And I celebrate you, and every part of me celebrates you, and for various reasons, not just because you're a fantastic mediator and a teacher, but because of the human being that you are and the friend that you are. And you are definitely senior. You're my senior. I'm a junior senior. You're a senior.
I'm a senior.
Not young. I'm not young, but I'm a junior senior, and I don't have all my stripes yet. You have all your stripes, so you will always be my senior. But there's something specific that occurred to me in listening to you this time, and that is how I've always been aware, and I've always resonated with your emphasis on interiority, on the whole human being, and particularly on the development of the whole human being. And I know how central and core that is to your daily practice, that mediation is an outgrowth and a social extension of what has to happen on an interior level, and that we all have to start at the core. And especially if we are facilitators and ambassadors of peace, we have to take that on in a deeply committed manner. And that is not easy. That is, you know, it was your modeling. And I always, like I said, I've always been attracted and I've always wanted to be a fly on every one of your walls, you know, in your yard, in your kitchen, in your bedroom, not to be kinky, but you know, how do you sleep? How do you dream? How do you sit when you sit on in meditation? You know, I know that those are at the core of who you are, and the basis and essence of what comes out of you starts there. And how I wanted to share with you that you have inspired me over the last 10 years in particular, longer than that, but in particular, to design skills for how to become the person who can impart the skill, you know, the values that you share with us. What are the skills what are the developmental skills? What are the tools, not just the skills, what are the tools to help develop oneself towards this end? It has become so key to my practice as a mediator, as a human being, as a teacher. I think I'm a teacher before I'm a mediator, and an artist before I'm a teacher. A human being before I'm an artist. So, you know, all these things fold into each other. But I just needed to say that. I don't have any point or question, but just to see that I see you in this way. I see you, I feel you, I honor you from this place. That's all I wanted to share. Happy birthday.
Thank you, Dorit. Beautifully said. Let me just say that interiority is essential. How do I say this? There is, I think of the answer to your question, what are the things that need to be done in order for the self to arise in its kind of authentic, most authentic forms? I think a large part of what we do is waste removal, is getting stuff out of the way of the free flow of life energy inside of you. You already are the person that you are looking for. All you have to do is to get everything else out of the way. Now that sounds really simple, and in a way simple-minded, but it turns out it's anything but. Because there are things that we hold on to that we aren't even aware of, and we don't know about until we've let go.
Right.
And so the whole process, in a way, is a process of letting go of false ideas of who you are. And that's a part that takes place entirely internally on one level, and another part takes place externally in relationship with others. So there's a meditation teacher, for example, who describes this as what he calls the monastery of relationship. That every relationship is a kind of monastery, and that we are searching for the place where self and other touch, that place of touch. It turns out that, well, let me see. I think I'm maybe going on a little too long here. We're keeping you way beyond your the time of the call, but let me just say very quickly, the shortcut on this is, if you don't have a meditation practice, by all means start one. sitting just by yourself. Go to a place that is beneath language, a place for which no language is even possible, and rest there. And that, I think, is what puts you on the path. Hopefully that will help.
I think
also say before you close, Meltem, thank you so much for doing this. This is really very heartwarming for me. You are all such beautiful people, and it really feeds my heart to see you all here. Ron Kelly, who is here doing such incredible work to support all of us, all of you. It's really spectacular. I'd love to spend a little time with every one of you. Thank you so much for coming.
Ken, thank you so much for this wonderful evening. I think I see that everyone is still here. We can listen to you all night long. We should plan to do this more often, because I mean, I'm a big fan of you, and I have learned so much from you. So from your wisdom, from your teachings, and the person you are, your generosity. I keep remembering it and passing it forward to other people. I hope to do that more often. Thank you again. Thank you everyone for being here and sharing this beautiful Friday evening with us. Hope to see you all again. Thanks everyone.
Thank you, Kenneth.
Bye.
Thank you.
Happy birthday, Ken.
Happy birthday.
Happy birthday.
Birthday.
Happy birthday, Ken.
Bye-bye.
Happy birthday.
Happy birthday.
Happy birthday.
Happy birthday.